Hello Blender nerds, welcome to a little tutorial on how to set up your first template so you can do video editing in the Blender Video Sequence Editor. Before I start the actual tutorial, I'm going to give you a little overview over how I structure my files in my template folder, because I think that is part of just having a functioning template. But if you're not interested in that, just skip ahead to this mark. So I have this template folder, which I just copy whenever I start making a new video, and then I rename the folder to funny Blender tutorial. I don't like to use spaces doing that, by the way, just because it is easier to navigate in Linux in the file system without having spaces. I find it personally just annoying, so I use underscores or the minus character dash. Yeah, that one. So in this directory, you can see the most important folder, that's raw, that's where all the raw video files go. Then there is the folder thumbnail, where I have a thumbnail template, which includes just orientation boxes and the standard font and the standard size that I use for my video thumbnails. Then this is my rendering directory. It's called temp or TMP. I just use this because I used to copy the fully rendered files, so not the pre-render or just 25% render or something like that, out of this directory in the end, so it would not be any longer in the temp directory. But I'm lazy, so I don't do that anymore. You can call it render, go crazy. I like TMP because it's temporary. Then I have the overlay directory, in which I have a bunch of end frame elements for YouTube. By the way, do not go crazy with the end cards or just the outro on YouTube, because you never know on which platform you are going to upload future video. For me, that is Odyssey, so I put some of my videos up there, and then the whole end screen spiel kind of just falls flat. Then I also have these images which are like text boxes. It's like a terminal window, and I can add some annotation in it because it's just more visible and easier to swipe into a video. Just like text usually just is not well readable, especially for people with visual impairment. It's hard to read a little white text in front of myself, although I find it pretty, but yeah, this is the option I choose now. Then there's the music directory. If you don't know, I use Artlist Music because Artlist just has the best license for video creators. You can use their music on every other platform. And if you want to, this is not sponsored, but if you want to, you can use my Artlist link in the description. So music for the video always is copied in a specific folder, because if my music folder structure changes for some reason, or I copy the video elsewhere, it will not work anymore. So that is just a layer of redundancy for me, but you don't have to do that if you are an orderly person. I'm not, so I do this. Then there's the B-roll directory, which is the same as the raw directory, just for B-roll. You don't have to separate it if you don't have time for that, but I find that it saves me a lot of time to separate B-roll from A-roll. If you don't know what that means, A-roll is basically the clips in which you are talking, and B-roll are the fillers where you show, like in a hiking vlog, you show yourself walking, you show yourself talking, that's A-roll. You show some nature shot, some wide angle shot, that's B-roll. So the only time it would not make sense to separate A-roll and B-roll is when you want the clips in chronological order, or you're having a hard time to figure out the chronological order switching between two directories, which can be a problem, especially if you film documentary. But for me, for instance, when I do like a talking head video about whatever, minimalism or something like that, and I show some just illustrating B-roll that has a topic and is not really chronological. For instance, I'm talking about decluttering stuff, and then I'm showing me decluttering something that's not really chronological, so it can be in a different directory, just so that it is easier for me to go through the B-roll in one go and not end up clicking on some A-roll. And then there is audio. I edit my video in Audacity still, but you can use a more open source video. If you haven't heard about Audacity's issues, maybe you should catch up on that. I will probably switch to another branch. Anyway, I usually edited my stuff in Audacity, and the Audacity files as well as the output files go in the audio folder. Okay, and that is the whole template. And then there is this template blend file, which is the file we are going to create today. So you can start making videos from an optimized template and save some time. All right, so I downloaded the newest Blender 4.02 for you, and we are going to just start and save this file first. I'm going to put this file up on my blog so you can download it if you want to. Okay, let's go. First of all, you have all these different tabs up here that are for 3D animation purposes or just connecting certain effects. As a total beginner, you do not need all of them. I never need any of them, even if I'm not a total noob in Blender. I'm still a noob. I consider myself a total dumbass when it comes to video editing, but I'm trying. First of all, the layout, that can go. That modeling, also not necessary for video editing. This one as well. UV editing, not needed. Texture, not needed. Yeah, just die on me. All right. Shading, not needed. Animation, that is also not needed. Rendering, you can leave the rendering window, but I usually open up a new window when rendering, so I also don't really need it, but you can leave it. Compositing might be interesting, but for now, don't need it for this template. That's also not needed, and the scripting is also not needed. So what is needed? Well, we want to add the video editing tab to this. Okay, then I'm going to bring the rendering tab to the back because I want the video editing in the first spot. And I also want tracking, because tracking can be really useful if I want to blur out a face or my traffic plates or something like that. So I use that sometimes. I also use other effects, but that is not relevant for a beginner tutorial, and it's certainly not relevant for a basic setup. So let's go back to the video tab, which you definitely want to have in your video sequence editor template. And we are now going to tweak this to the needs of a YouTube creator. First of all, on the left side, we have this window, which is a file browser, and you don't really need that. I mean, you could drop files from here. Let's say I'm in my YouTube directory here, and I could go into a directory like this where I have basic overlays that I want to insert into my video. So let's say I have used this animation here, and I can just drop it into the video sequence editor and then use it. But I barely ever use that because I have my well-structured folder and I don't really want to waste space on just file browser window. So I will instead just open a real file browser and have that in the same workspace as Blender. So I can use that and I can drag and drop files from there. I don't need to waste space in my editing window. That does just not make sense to me. This I am going to change into a properties window. And in the properties window, I can have all my rendering settings, which I am going to open here with this little printer. And then we are later going to edit the rendering settings. But just remember, this is a handy window to have because, for instance, if I want to do my pre-render in 25% size, so just every fourth pixel will be rendered, I will just edit this here, and then I could also bring it back to 100% when I want to do the final render. But I definitely want to do several pre-renders before I render the full video because I don't want to waste 3 hours on a video that I just want to play back for finding mistakes. So now here I have already the preview, which is just another output of the sequencer. This is this window, the sequencer. So you've got a sequencer here. This is the bar for the window below. And then you have a sequencer in the top, as you can see. It also has a little sequencer icon, and this has a little sequencer icon. But in the drop down here, you have sequencer activated, and here you have preview. You can also do both, like sequencer and preview. Let's just use a file here, like just some flower. And if I insert this bouquet of flowers here, then I will have the preview in the top window, separated from the sequencer. But I can also have it within the window. Yeah, you see sequencer and preview, then you have it in one window and you waste a lot of space left and right. We're not doing that. Or you can have it as a backdrop. If you want to do that, then it appears behind your movie strips, which is weird and slow. So you can go to view and then select preview as backdrop, and then you see it in the back of your video strips. I don't know who finds this practical. I certainly don't. If I film a vlog, I will just activate the thumbnails instead. So here you can see a thumbnail, and if you then have another strip, you will see another thumbnail, just like this. See, there are my two different bouquets of flowers. Here's this, here's that, and I can immediately see which is which. So that is the sequencer. By the way, nota bene, if you make your strips too small, let's just add a prop strip so I can show you. Just gonna add a color strip here and scroll. See, if I zoom out and the height of the movie strips is not high enough, then the thumbnail will not show. So whenever you feel like, oh, where are my thumbnails? They didn't load. They did. I mean, they might not, because they only load once you visually request them, as in if you're zoomed in enough. And if you don't see your thumbnails before Googling anything, try this. Then they will magically just show up. So let's just leave the movie strips here, and we will go into all the tweaking once we have the windows that we need. The next window that I want to have is a keyframe window, and I can create another little sub window by just going over the corner of the window, either here or there. And now it depends on if you are dragging the window out or in. You go to the corner, you see this little crosshair appear, and if I drag inwards, I create a duplicate of this window on the right side, you know, the flower window that I have. Now I just created a duplicate. And I can create another duplicate by going to the corner again, the crosshair appears, and then I draw the cursor inwards. All right, now how do I get rid of those? Well, you do the same, you just draw outwards. The window that you want to keep, let's say it's this, the middle sequencer preview window. So I go to this little crosshair, and you do that on any corner, I think. You can also go here, and then you go to the right, boom, they are merged, and the one that prevails is the one you started the movement from. So I'm doing the same. I click in the left lower corner and then move out of the window. As you can see now, the whole surface is selected. You see this little arrow appear, and the left window will be swallowed by the right. Okay, I hope this makes sense. Now I want to create a new window and clone this window where I'm in. So I am going to the corner again, drawing inwards, and I have a second sequencer window. However, I don't want a sequencer. I want to be able to edit keyframe graphs. So what do we pick? Graph editor. I barely ever need the navigation or options on the left, so I will move those to the side so I have more space. And this is my keyframe window here. Now this is my absolute basic setup, and now we are going to tweak it in a way that it is practical and ready for editing. First, let's optimize the render settings for YouTube. So we have 25 frames per second, which is perfect for my Sony cameras. They all have 25 frames per second, so I don't need to change anything here. Frame start, I usually choose 0, and the end frame is over here. So you see you only have 250 frames, which is 10 seconds. So we want to make longer videos, right? So what do? We go to an end frame where we want to go, for instance, in the video sequence editor. And you can navigate there by pressing Shift and the right mouse button. So for instance, here's the 1 minute mark. And by the way, this timeline on the top, you can change between seeing frames and timestamps by pressing Ctrl-T. Ctrl-T, now you see the number of the frames, which is not telling you much unless you're very good at arithmetic calculations. So now we're going back to timestamps. But it's useful sometimes to see which frame you're at. Now I want to make like a 10-minute video, which is like a good time for a YouTube video. I go and click either left on timeline bar, or I just click anywhere in the window around the 10-minute mark, Shift button and right click. And then I press Ctrl and End, and it will automatically extend the render range to this frame. Perfect. Now press Home and you zoom out and have the full render range in your sequencer. So this is the way I choose these settings, but you could of course pick that up here as well, whatever is easier for you. Now let's edit the output directory. The directory I chose for output is, as I said, the temporary directory, but in the folder where we're at, we don't really have a temp directory. should have copied my template to this folder. So we have a temporary directory here now, and I could choose this as like an absolute path as it is now and go there, you know, just this is the absolute path in my file system. Or let's just exit this. And this is saved in this exact folder I showed you right here, blender_template. And I can make this a relative directory, but by just entering another slash. Now let's check and open. See, we are in the temp directory below our parent directory. And here is our template blend, the one that we are just editing. This is a trick to make every directory relative, and I recommend when you edit your template to make all the directories relative after you're done with the editing. That is done here in File, External Data, and then make paths relative. You do that at the end when you have implemented all the standard overlays, for instance, that you have in your main directory here. So you have like an overlay directory, right? And then in this directory, there are your standard subscribe button animations or whatever you need as a creator, right? Now the output, we do not want PNG files as an output. We want FFmpeg video. And for the encoding, we will choose MPEG-4 as recommended by YouTube, H260 for codec, and perceptually lossless quality. The encoding speed kind of dictates the size of your file a little bit. So if you choose real time, which is the fastest, then you will get a larger file. If you choose good, you will get a smaller file because the compression will work better. As a keyframe interval, I choose 1, and the audio codec is going to be recommended as AAC, and 320 bitrate is pretty good. You can also use MP3, whatever you like. Recommended sampling rate for YouTube is this. You can Google that in one go. Then you will find the answer right here from Google support. And as I said, 220 kilobyte per second for some crystal clear audio is also a good choice. Yeah, use whatever you like as audio codec. AAC is fine, MP3 is fine. Okay, so now all the settings are done. The metadata, I will exclude this because it's just not interesting. Rather add a note. And that's it. Don't forget to save. Oh, see, and I forgot to delete this properties window over here. I don't want it on the right side because I'm a right-handed person. I'm going to swallow this. Instead, I want to have the little proxy settings window on this side, which you can open here in view. And now I have the view settings, proxy settings, and I will change the proxy size to 25% because who needs 100% proxies? Oh, you don't know what a proxy is? Sorry. Okay, a proxy is a preview file in a lower resolution than your original file. So for instance, the picture quality is lower. Because of that, it loads faster. It can be used as a preview, but it has the same temporal properties as your original file. So you see the same image, just smaller at the same timestamp, and therefore you can load the proxy file into your video editor. And then later, all you do is switch out the files, you know, by changing the directory, the physical directory, and then you have a working, already edited file ready to go, ready to render the real thing, which saves a lot of time. But I forget to do that all the time as well, so no shame on you for not doing this. By the way, if you can avoid to create proxies, I would recommend that and rather advise you to use your camera's proxy recording option instead of letting Blender create proxies. Not only do proxy files come with many issues, as in switching back and forth with them can crash Blender. I have had that problem on multiple platforms, and it slows down your editing process because whenever you import a new file, it'll automatically create a proxy file, and that means more pre-rendering time is taken away from your editing time. So if you have the option to create proxies with recording the video on your camera, Sony has that option, then I recommend doing that instead of creating proxies in file. Now a word on the prefetch phrases option. This can sometimes be a blessing, but it can also slow down your process. If you have a lot of small split files going on, I recommend activating this option because then you will not have a delay when in the playback of your video file in the preview, right, the playback cursor is going over one strip and then the next strip starts, right? Your cursor is going like this and then the next file starts. Then you will not have as much of a delay here if you have a slow computer, but otherwise this option is not needed all the time. In general, it leads to faster playback, but sometimes it also really doesn't make that big of a difference. For me, I have 16 GB of RAM and I have a Core i7 Intel processor, which is not like the creme de la creme, but it's good enough. It's actually pretty fast for rendering for my purposes. I don't do any 4K. So now this is done. I will click 4 to have 1/4 of the size, which gives me a clean every 4th pixel image and is perfect for the 25% proxy preview as well, which you will see in this video. If you have proxies activated and not the scene size or 100%, which is also a proxy, so lower quality, but 100% of the pixels. So if you click that, you will see the image in its native resolution, which is good because it looks cleaner than a zoomed in image. I will also try to maximize the area of the sequence editor because as an advanced editor, I have a lot of things going on in my timeline. And that is our hint to go and edit the timeline. Now, if you are a perfectionist, you can also edit the channel names, as in, for instance, this can be audio. Audio is always down below. This is audio 2, right? And then comes video. I leave the last one empty because I don't want to waste the space. Maybe I want to do some more audio editing, who knows. And then the next channel will be adjustment for like color grading and stuff like that. Then we have text, overlays, and the music and sound effects if I have any. Or you can do another sound effects strip. All right, so this would be my general setup. This of course can be changed. And now we come to the very important topic of bumpers, because I want bumper strips on the left. It makes my life easier. And for that, I use color strips. We already have one here because I needed that before to show you how to see the thumbnails. This color strip I will now just place right in the middle, and then I will cut it using the K shortcut, or in my case C, because I associate C with cutting and it's easier for me to edit fast that way. So I have reassigned that shortcut and I recommend you do so too. Now I delete the right side and yeah, we are going to create a bunch of bumpers just like this. Control C and then Control V. You can drag it down by pressing G for grab or just grabbing it with your cursor and then Y to stay in the Y axis. Again, I'm going to copy some in here because I need a bunch of bumpers and I'm going to move them to the other side. If I drag them over to this color strip on the left here and you see if it is overlapping, one becomes red, it will snap to the right side of this strip. If I pull it over too much to the left, it will snap to the left. So that's exactly what I want, and that is the purpose of my bumpers. And now we are going to edit those. I'm going to drag them down below using the Y key again. And then I'm going to make them the color of the things I want them to be bumpers for, just as a reminder. And here we go. I think those are enough. All right. And now we're going to change the names and the colors. This is what I used to do right from the beginning before we had these labels on the left where you can call it overlay or whatever. I used to just name the bumpers that so I would know which kind of strip would go where. So this is called color, but I'm going to rename it audio 1 and then this is audio 2. By the way, you can just go with your cursor over a field like that and press Ctrl C, switch strip and press Ctrl V without even clicking into it. And then here I have audio 2 and then there goes video. Maybe you should choose 2 video strips because then you can more easily edit that. For instance, if you have a fade and you don't want to do a crossfade automatically, you want to do it manually, then you can choose another video strip. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Oh no, this is why I hate the labels, because now I want adjustment, right? I'm gonna change that later. And now I want all the audio strips to have green color because that's just universal, the color for audio. And I'm going to color pick that using the color picker. There you go. And again, color picker. And for the video, I do the same. By the way, you can copy this property too if you want. If you select the, for instance, music, which is also audio, and then I press Shift and select this other strip, which already has the green color, I go and click on the color on the right and just copy to select it, and boom, now it is green. You can do that with almost any property, by the way, in Blender. So now I have these bumpers, and then there's video 2. Let's just do the copying for the fun of it. Right click, copy to selected, and then the adjustment, well, adjustment layers are green. Let's just add one here. Adjustment, Shift A, just where your cursor is, this will be inserted. Shift A and then adjustment layer. Drag it up here and press E for extend to the right or left side of your cursor. So if my cursor is here and I extend it to the left, pressing E, or extend it to the right or shorten it, pressing E when I'm on the right side of the cursor. Now I'm going to pick my adjustment color. There we go. And then text is violet. I'm just going to add a text layer here, which will also stay in this template because personally I have a fonts directory and I will preload all the fonts already. This directory just never changes, and if it does, it is easy enough to change it in the template. So this saves me a lot of grief, which is why it will go in there. So for the text, we choose purple color. And then we have overlays, which is like an image or something. Let's just choose one image here. And the overlay color is brown. And here's a preview in it because I have the thumbnails activated, but I can just pick this color anyway. And now I delete it again because I don't need an image in there. Anyway, this is it. The bumpers are done. And I can now move whenever I have a strip and I import a new strip and it just randomly ends up anywhere in my video sequencer. I can just take it and bump it up against the start. And then I never have to fidget with the start cursor. Maybe I'm doing this all wrong and there is just a completely different and way better approach to do this. I do not know. I do not care as much. This works for me. This is my template. And I also like the color coding because on the left side with the labels, you can't really have that, right? It's not super practical. And I'm going to correct these names here so it matches my actual, oh, come on. Great. And now we save it, and don't forget to make all the paths relative and remove your video footage and eventually created proxies in the proxy folder that you didn't want there because it's just a template. You don't need the proxies. And you can implement your fonts here by opening the fonts directory. I have a shortcut to my fonts directory here, and I can choose my standard font, which is going to be Lato regular, right? And then I pick a size. 60 is a bit too big for a footnote. And I might add some text like footnote here. And there you go. Now you are ready to edit this file. And for my purposes, I will also add a color grading in the adjustment layer, but whatever works for you. The adjustment layer is where you generally set up modifiers like brightness, contrast control. The most important is the white balance. And then you have also a hue correct modifier, which is the same as color grading. I like this type of color grading better than using color wheels, but you do you. And if you want another tutorial on how I do my brownish faded color grading, then you let me know and I'm gonna do another tutorial on that thing. You might also want to check out my blog entry on this so you can catch up on all the shortcuts and little tricks that I probably forgot to put in the video. And if you found any mistakes, please point them out in a friendly manner in the comments so we can all benefit from your wisdom. That's it. Don't forget to make paths relative. Ooh, I almost forgot one thing. I want to have a preview window, right? So I'm going to create a preview window and then press home so it's also zoomed out, and I will save this preview video with my Blender file, because when I open the template again, then the preview video that is already zoomed correctly and has the right position and size will also appear with my template file. So I like having this render result preview. Oh, and I also forgot another thing that might be interesting for you. Sorry for that. If you have a very slow machine, or you are afraid that you will accidentally change anything while rendering because you accidentally click on stuff, this is something that happened to me a few times, then you can activate the lock interface option with Control Alt F12 in my case, because I changed the shortcut. I think it's Control F12 in the normal setup. You render the animation, right? Then the interface will be locked to the point that you cannot click anything. But I don't need that. My computer is not that slow and it doesn't make a huge difference either. Now I wanted to show you a few options of the video sequencer as well, because I forgot. And that is the labels. If you can see, I can go back here, Control Z my way. I have hit undo a bunch of times. Now we have configured this template so you can see the thumbnails, right? But if you have a slow machine, you can deactivate that. The grid is a thing I personally like because I work a lot with timestamps and it just helps me organize my strip better. Then the F curves are the keyframe curves you put in place. For instance, if you have a fade out in an audio file, you will then see the fade out in the visual strip. Let me just show you that real quick. For instance, if we let's activate the sound actually with the waveform display on by default. I really like that idea. And now we zoom into this audio strip, right? I'm gonna turn up the volume just so we can see a little bit of the volume. And then we are clicking on our timeline up until here. And now I want to create a fade out, right? This is what I have this curves window for. I'm going to zoom in by pressing home. And then here I am just making this frame, as in the frame number 220. I'm gonna make this a keyframe. This is the audio, and the sound of 15 times the normal audio, which is insane, is now locked. And I can see it here as this little dot. I can't actually see it, but here, there's a dot. This is my keyframe. And now at the end of the video, I want the volume to be 0. So I'm going to reduce it to 0 and then add another keyframe by clicking this little button. And there you can see our fade out. Here you have this fade out curve that is visible in the strip. To some people this is really helpful. By the way, pressing home again in this keyframe window, you can move the keyframe up and down, left and right. If you press X it goes left and right. If you press Y, it goes up and down. And here you can see in the corresponding window how this changes the curve, and you can see this curve displayed in an absolute style of visualization. Anyway, this is just handy if you are an advanced editor. For me, this is useful. I use this every day, and I use the keyframes every day. If you don't need them, just merge it with another window. But I can do another one just on keyframing and crossfades and effects. But yeah, like a basic keyframe tutorial if you are interested in that. And now the other options, those are all pretty standard, and you can have all these options and just leave them in there. I don't find them annoying or anything, but if you want a cleaner view, you can remove, for instance, all of these options in the beginning, and then you will only see the image, like the preview thumbnail, or you will not see anything. And if you want to just remove all the labels and previews together, you click this icon, and then all the color tags, all the previews, all the names are gone, and you only see your timeline. Personally, I don't find this helpful, and it's not really an option I need for anything, so I barely ever do this other than on accident. But yeah, that is how you handle your timeline. This is how you handle your video sequence editor. And that is the basic template that I use for everything I do in Blender to edit videos for YouTube. I hope this helped, and that's really it.